Hi everyone. Welcome to Lunar Sleeping Studio. The night the story begins is quiet in a way that feels intentional, as if the world itself has decided to lower its voice. The moon hangs low and round, glowing like a promise that everything restless will eventually find its rest, and beneath it lies the small village of Elder Willow, a place where time moves slowly and memories linger in the air like the scent of old wood and warm bread. The cobblestone paths are silvered with moonlight, and windows glow softly as lamps are turned down one by one, until only a few remain awake, listening to the gentle hum of crickets and the distant sigh of the river. In a modest cottage at the edge of the village, a man named Rowan sits beside an open window, his hands wrapped around a mug that has long gone cold, his eyes unfocused as he stares into the dark beyond the garden fence. He is not old, but life has weighed on him in ways that have bent his shoulders and slowed his breath, and tonight, like many nights before, sleep feels like a distant shore he cannot quite reach. Rowan exhales slowly and sets the mug aside, listening as the old floorboards creak behind him. "You're awake again," a gentle voice says, and he turns to see Mira standing in the doorway, her hair loose around her shoulders, her expression soft but knowing. She steps closer, careful not to disturb the quiet, and rests her hand on his arm. "You keep carrying the day into the night," she adds, not accusing, just observant. Rowan offers a tired smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. "If I put it down," he replies quietly, "I'm afraid it won't be there in the morning when I need it." Mira squeezes his arm gently. "Or maybe," she says, "it's waiting for you to trust that morning can carry itself." He doesn't answer, because he doesn't know how, and the silence that follows is not uncomfortable, just full. Mira moves to the small bookshelf by the hearth and pulls out a worn leather-bound book, its pages yellowed and edges soft from years of use. She returns and sits across from Rowan, settling into the chair as if she has done this 100 times before, which she has. "Do you remember what this is?" she asks, brushing her thumb along the spine. Rowan nods faintly. "Stories," he says. "You always say they help." She smiles, a little sadly, a little hopefully. "They don't fix things," she says. "They just remind us how fixing feels." She opens the book, but instead of reading from it, she closes her eyes for a moment, as if listening inward, and when she begins to speak, her voice is slow and calm, flowing like water over smooth stones. "Long ago, before Elder Willow had a name, there was a forest that breathed. Not in the way lungs do, but in the way living things expand and soften when they feel safe. The trees grew close together, their branches woven into a canopy that filtered the moonlight into a gentle glow, and beneath them lived a young woman named Elara, who believed that every sound had a reason and every silence had a lesson. Elara lived alone in a small clearing, in a hut built from fallen branches and patience, and each morning she would wake before the sun to listen. She listened to the rustle of leaves, the distant call of owls returning home, the quiet steps of deer passing through, and in these sounds she found comfort, because they reminded her that the world continued even when she was still. One evening, as Elara gathered herbs by the edge of the stream, she noticed something unusual. The water, usually clear and steady, was trembling, as if unsure of its own direction. She knelt and dipped her fingers into it, feeling a faint warmth where there should have been coolness. "What troubles you?" She whispered, not because she expected an answer, but because asking felt right. To her surprise, the stream shifted, rippling more strongly, and in that movement she sensed a warning, a quiet unease spreading through the forest. Elara stood and looked around, noticing how the birds had gone silent and how the wind seemed to hesitate before touching the leaves. Something was changing, and she felt it settle in her chest like a question she couldn't ignore. That night, Elara dreamed of a lantern flickering in the dark, its flame struggling but unextinguished, carried by hands she could not see. When she woke, her heart was heavy with urgency, and she knew she had to follow the feeling rather than resist it. She packed a small satchel with bread, water, and the smooth stone her mother had given her long ago, a stone that reminded her that even the smallest things could be grounding. As she stepped into the forest, the trees seemed to lean closer, as if listening, and Elara spoke softly as she walked, promising that she would return, that she would not abandon them to whatever shadow was creeping in. Hours later, as the light began to fade, Elara came upon a clearing she had never seen before, and at its center stood an old man seated on a fallen log, his back curved like a question mark, his eyes bright and alert. "I was wondering when you'd arrive," he said, as if greeting an expected guest. Elara stopped a few steps away, her instincts alert but calm. "You were?" she asked. The old man chuckled, a sound like dry leaves brushing together. "The forest speaks," he replied. "Not everyone listens." He gestured for her to sit, and though every sensible thought told her to be cautious, something deeper urged her forward. They sat in silence for a moment, the air between them filled with the unspoken. "The stream is restless," Elara finally said. "The forest feels uncertain." The old man nodded slowly. "Balance is shifting," he said. "When people forget how to rest, the world forgets how to hold them." Elara frowned. "Rest?" she repeated. "This is about rest?" He looked at her kindly. "It is always about rest," he said. "About knowing when to carry and when to set down." His words echoed something Elara had felt but never named, and she swallowed, sensing the weight of what lay ahead. As the moon rose, the old man stood with surprising steadiness and pointed deeper into the forest. "There is a place where worries gather," he said. "They grow heavy there, feeding on attention, multiplying when they are never released." Elara felt a chill, not of fear, but of recognition. "What must be done?" she asked. The old man smiled, a quiet, encouraging smile. "Someone must listen without holding on," he replied. "Someone must witness without carrying." Elara closed her eyes briefly, thinking of her quiet warnings, of the way listening had always steadied her, and when she opened them, her voice was firm. "Then I will go." The path they followed was narrow and winding, and as they walked, the forest seemed to press closer, shadows stretching and retreating like slow breaths. Elara noticed how the old man moved carefully, as if aware of each step, and she matched her pace to his, learning without instruction. At last, they reached a hollow where the air felt thick and heavy, and Elara felt the weight of unspoken worries settle on her shoulders. She breathed deeply, reminding herself that she was here to listen, not to solve, and as she did, the heaviness eased, just a little. "Sit," the old man said softly, and she did. Together, They listened, not for sounds, but for feelings, for the quiet ache beneath the noise of the world. Images rose in Ilara's mind, not her own memories, but impressions of others, of weariness, of nights spent awake, of hearts afraid to let go. Tears slipped down her cheeks, not from sadness alone, but from the release of understanding. She let them fall, not wiping them away, trusting that this, too, was part of listening. When at last the air lightened and the hollow seemed less burdened, the old man stood and nodded. "This is only the beginning," he said. "The forest will remember what you've done tonight." Ilara felt both tired and strangely peaceful, as if she had finally set something down she hadn't known she was carrying. "Will it be enough?" she asked quietly. He met her gaze. "It will be," he said, "if you remember this feeling and return to it when the world grows loud again." Myra's voice softens as the story pauses, and Rowan realizes he has leaned back in his chair, his breathing slower, his chest no longer tight. He hasn't fallen asleep, but something inside him has loosened, like a knot gently undone. Mira closes the book without a sound and watches him, a small smile forming when she sees his eyes finally drift closed. Outside, the village rests, the forest beyond breathing steadily, and the night holds its quiet promise, waiting patiently for those who are ready to trust it. Morning arrives slowly, like it is being careful not to startle anyone, and the forest exhales as pale light slips between the trees. Dew clings to leaves and blades of grass, catching the glow of dawn, and Ilara wakes, on the forest floor with the hollow still around her, calmer now, lighter, as if it has released a long-held breath. For a moment she does not move. She listens. The heaviness she felt the night before has thinned into something softer, like an ache after tears, and though her body is tired, her heart feels clearer than it has in a long time. She sits up and notices the old man is gone. There are no footprints, no sign he was ever there, only the fallen log and the quiet certainty that what happened was real. Ilara rises slowly, brushing leaves from her clothes, and as she steps out of the hollow, the forest seems to welcome her back with gentle sounds, birds testing their voices, the faint whisper of wind through branches. She walks without hurry, guided not by a path but by a feeling, and as she moves, she senses something new, a subtle awareness, as if the worries she listened to last night have left echoes that now know her name. When she reaches her clearing, the hut looks the same as always, humble and familiar, but she feels different standing before it, as if she has crossed an unseen threshold. Inside, she sets down her satchel and pours water into a clay cup, her hands steady, her movements unhurried. She drinks and closes her eyes, letting the coolness ground her, and as she does, a faint knock sounds at the door. Ilara opens it to find a young boy standing there, his hair tangled, his eyes darting nervously as if expecting something to leap from the shadows. "I'm sorry," he blurts out before she can speak. "I didn't know where else to go." Ilara crouches to meet his gaze, her voice gentle. "You don't need to apologize," she says. "What's your name?" He hesitates, then whispers, "Taran." She invites him inside, and he perches on the edge of a stool, his feet swinging slightly above the ground. "I can't sleep," he admits, staring at his hands. "Every time I close my eyes, my head gets loud." Ilara feels a familiar ache of recognition, not her own this time. but the echo of what she listened to in the hollow. "What does the loudness say?" she asks softly. Taryn shrugs, tears welling. "That I'll mess things up. That I already have." Ilara nods, not dismissing his fear, not feeding it either. "Sometimes," she says, "thoughts are like frightened animals. They make noise because they don't feel safe." She shows him how to sit comfortably, how to place his hands on his knees, how to breathe slowly, counting each inhale and exhale. At first, Taryn fidgets, glancing around, but Ilara remains calm, breathing with him, her presence steady and patient. Gradually, his shoulders lower, his breath evens, and when he looks up at her again, there is a hint of relief in his eyes. "It's quieter," he says, surprised. Ilara smiles. "The quiet was always there," she replies. "You just needed to notice it." Word begins to travel through the forest and beyond, not in loud announcements, but in small, urgent whispers. A woman whose grief keeps her awake at night. A hunter burdened by mistakes he cannot undo. A traveler who has forgotten what home feels like. One by one, they find their way to Ilara's clearing, unsure of what they seek but drawn by a promise they cannot name. Ilara does not claim to have answers. She listens. She sits with them in silence when words feel too heavy, and when they speak, she does not rush to respond. She teaches them how to rest without guilt, how to set down what they have been carrying, if only for a moment. Not everyone understands. One afternoon, a man named Corbin arrives, his posture rigid, his voice sharp. "I don't have time for sitting around," he says, pacing the clearing. "There's work to be done. Problems to fix." Ilara watches him patiently. "And when do you rest?" she asks. He scoffs. "When everything is handled." She tilts her head slightly. "And when will that be?" Corbin stops pacing, irritation flickering into uncertainty. "I don't know," he admits quietly. Ilara gestures to a stone near the stream. "Sit with me for a moment," she says. "Just one." He hesitates, then reluctantly sits, arms crossed. Minutes pass. The forest hums softly around them. Corbin's jaw tightens, then loosens, and when he finally exhales, it is shaky, as if he has been holding his breath for years. As days turn into nights, Ilara feels the toll of holding space for so many hearts. She is careful not to take their worries into herself, remembering the old man's words, but still, there are evenings when exhaustion settles deep in her bones. One such night, she sits alone by the fire, staring into the flames, feeling the familiar creep of doubt. "Am I doing enough?" she whispers to the empty clearing. The fire crackles, and for a moment, she imagines the old man's voice, calm and steady, reminding her that listening is not measured by outcomes, only by presence. That night, she dreams again of the lantern, but this time, the flame is steadier, brighter, and she realizes that it is not being carried by unseen hands. It is resting on the ground, illuminating a circle of calm, inviting others to step into its light when they are ready. She wakes with a sense of quiet resolve, understanding that her role is not to lead or to fix, but to remain, to keep the light steady. Back in the cottage at the edge of Elder Willow, Rowan stirs in his sleep, his brow smoothing as if a long argument inside him has finally paused. Mira watches him from the doorway, her expression tender, and as the night deepens, the house settles into a restful silence. Outside, the village dreams, the forest breathes, and somewhere, far beyond the reach of waking worry, a lantern glows softly, reminding the world that rest is not weakness, but a return to balance. The night deepens into a softer kind of darkness, the kind that feels less like an ending and more like a cradle, and in the forest Ilara wakes before the moon reaches its highest point. There is a faint restlessness in the air, subtle but unmistakable, like a low note humming beneath a song. She sits up on her sleeping mat, listening, and realizes the forest is asking something of her, not in words, but in feeling. It is the same pull she felt before the hollow revealed itself, a quiet invitation to move rather than remain still. She stands, wraps her shawl around her shoulders, and steps outside, letting the cool night air sharpen her senses. As she walks, the path ahead seems to form with each step, branches shifting just enough to allow her through, roots settling beneath her feet. She does not rush. She trusts that whatever waits will do so patiently. Soon, she hears voices, low and strained, carried on the night breeze. She follows the sound to the edge of a small clearing where two figures stand facing each other, their shadows long and tense in the moonlight. A woman with clenched fists and tear-bright eyes, and a man whose jaw is set so tightly it seems to ache. Ilara does not announce herself. She stays at the edge, listening, feeling the weight of words that have not yet been spoken. "You never listen," the woman says, her voice breaking. "You're always somewhere else." The man shakes his head, frustration flaring. "I'm trying," he snaps. "Everything I do is for us." Ilara feels the familiar heaviness press in, the gathering of unspoken fears and unmet needs. She steps forward slowly, her presence calm but unmistakable. "May I sit with you?" she asks gently. They turn, startled, and for a moment suspicion flickers, but exhaustion quickly overtakes it. The woman nods, wiping her eyes. "I don't know how to fix this," she admits. They sit on the grass, a careful distance between them, and Ilara speaks softly. "You don't have to fix anything tonight," she says. "Just breathe." She demonstrates, slow and steady, and though their breaths are uneven at first, gradually they begin to match her rhythm. Silence settles, thick but not oppressive, and in that silence, the man's shoulders slump. "I'm afraid," he says suddenly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Afraid that if I stop pushing, everything will fall apart." The woman looks at him, surprise softening her expression. "I didn't know," she says quietly. Ilara watches as something fragile shifts between them, not healed, but seen. When they leave, walking side by side but not touching, Ilara remains in the clearing, feeling the echo of their emotions fade like ripples in water. She exhales deeply, aware of her own fatigue, and wonders how long she can continue before the weight becomes too much. As if in answer, a soft glow appears among the trees, growing brighter until the old man steps into view, lantern in hand. "You are learning," he says, his voice warm. Ilara feels a rush of relief and bows her head slightly. "I'm afraid of failing them," she admits. The old man smiles. "Failure comes from carrying what is not yours," he says. "You are learning to let the forest hold what you cannot." They walk together, the lantern casting gentle light on their path. Others are coming, the old man says. From beyond the forest. Elara's brow furrows. I don't know if I'm ready, she replies. He stops and turns to her, his gaze kind but firm. Readiness is not the absence of fear, he says. It is the decision to remain open despite it. He lifts the lantern slightly, and Elara notices how its flame does not flicker, no matter how the night breeze moves. This light is not yours alone, he adds. It grows when shared. Days later, the forest receives its first visitor from afar. A traveler named Lisa whose cloak is worn thin and whose eyes carry the weight of many roads. She arrives at Elara's clearing just as dawn breaks, her steps hesitant. I was told there was a place here where people could rest, she says, her voice rough with disbelief and hope. Elara gestures for her to sit, offering water and warmth. Lisa drinks deeply, then laughs softly, a sound edged with tears. I forgot what it felt like to stop, she confesses. Elara sits beside her, saying nothing, allowing the moment to be enough. As Lisa rests, Elara notices how the forest seems to lean in, leaves shimmering, birds quieting as if in respect. She feels a deep sense of connection, not just to those who come seeking peace, but to the forest itself, as if they are working together, each supporting the other. That night, as Elara prepares to sleep, she feels gratitude settle in her chest, mingled with a new understanding. Rest is not a destination, she realizes, but a practice, one that must be returned to again and again. In Elderwillow, Rowan wakes briefly in the early hours, the echo of lantern light lingering in his mind. He turns onto his side, his breath slow and even, and drifts back into sleep without the usual struggle. Mira watches the steady rise and fall of his chest and smiles, sensing that something is changing, not all at once, but enough to matter. The night continues its gentle watch, and the forest, alive with quiet wisdom, prepares for what the coming days will ask of those who dare to listen. The morning carries a different weight when Elara wakes, not heavy, but full, as if the air itself has been storing something overnight and is now ready to release it. Sunlight filters through the leaves in soft ribbons, painting the clearing in gold and green, and for a moment she lies still, listening to her own breath and the steady pulse of the forest. There is a sense of anticipation humming beneath the calm, and she knows today will ask more of her than the days before. She rises slowly, stretches the stiffness from her limbs, and steps outside, grounding herself in the familiar scent of earth and pine. Before she can prepare her morning tea, footsteps approach, faster and more urgent than the gentle arrivals she has grown used to. A young woman stumbles into the clearing, her face pale, her eyes wide with panic. Please, she gasps, clutching her chest, I can't make it stop. Elara moves toward her without hesitation, guiding her to sit, placing a steady hand on her back. You're safe here, she says softly. Let's slow it down together. The woman's breath comes in sharp, shallow bursts, her hands trembling as if trying to grasp something invisible. Elara lowers herself beside her and begins to breathe deeply, exaggerating each inhale and exhale, giving the woman something solid to follow. Minutes pass, then more, and gradually the trembling eases, the sharp panic dulling into quiet sobs. I thought I was dying, the woman whispers. Elara shakes her head gently. You were overwhelmed, she replies. Your body was asking for rest. The woman closes her eyes, leaning slightly into Elara's steady presence, and when she finally opens them again, there is relief mingled with exhaustion. My name is Sarah, she says. Elara smiles. You're welcome here, Sarah. Stay as long as you need. As Sarah rests, Elara feels a familiar pull in her chest, the echo of all the moments she has held space for others, and she recognizes a quiet truth forming inside her. The forest is becoming a place of refuge, and with that comes responsibility, not just to others, but to herself. She steps away briefly, walking to the edge of the stream, kneeling to touch the cool water. Help me keep my balance, she whispers, unsure who she is speaking to, the forest, the old man, or something deeper still. Later that day, a small group gathers in the clearing, strangers to one another but united by the same unspoken need. They sit in a loose circle, some with eyes closed, others staring at the ground, and Elara senses the collective tension, the way unshared worries can amplify one another. She does not rush to fill the silence. Instead, she lets it stretch, trusting that quiet can do work words cannot. At first, the stillness is uncomfortable, but slowly, shoulders relax, breaths deepen, and the air softens. One man clears his throat. I don't know why I'm here, he says. I just couldn't keep going the way I was. A woman across from him nods. Me neither, she admits. I feel like I've been running for years. Elara listens, her gaze gentle, her posture open. You don't need to explain yourselves, she says. You only need to be here. The group falls silent again, and this time, the quiet feels different, supportive, almost warm. As the sun begins to dip, Elara notices how Sarah watches the group, her earlier panic replaced by cautious curiosity. She joins the circle hesitantly, and when Elara meets her eyes, Sarah offers a small, grateful smile. In that moment, Elara feels the lantern within her glow a little brighter, not because she has done something extraordinary, but because she has allowed space for ordinary healing to unfold. That night, exhaustion finally catches up with her. After the others leave to rest where they can, Elara sits alone by the fire, her body heavy, her mind quiet but alert. Doubt creeps in, soft but persistent. What if this grows beyond her ability to hold? What if she falters? As if in answer, the fire shifts, and she hears the old man's voice in her memory, reminding her that even light must rest to keep burning. She leans back, closes her eyes, and allows herself to do what she has been teaching others, to rest without guilt. In Elder Willow, rain begins to fall, a gentle, steady rhythm against rooftops and windows. Rowan stirs, listening, and for the first time in a long while, the sound soothes rather than unsettles him. Mira lies beside him now, her hand resting lightly on his chest, feeling the calm beneath her palm. The village sleeps, held by the quiet assurance that even in the midst of worry and weariness, there are places, both seen and unseen, where it is safe to pause, to breathe, and to begin again. The rain fades before dawn, leaving the forest washed clean and softly steaming as the first light filters through the trees. Elara wakes to the scent of wet earth and leaves, her body still tired but her mind calm, and she takes a moment to lie still, listening to the delicate drip of water falling from branch to branch. Each sound feels deliberate, as if the forest is speaking in a quieter language today, reminding her that renewal often comes gently, without announcement. She sits up and stretches, feeling gratitude for the simple fact of waking without urgency. As she prepares a small meal, she senses movement at the edge of the clearing. An older woman approaches slowly, leaning on a walking stick, her steps careful but determined. Her hair is silver, braided neatly down her back, and her eyes carry both kindness and deep weariness. "I was told you help people rest," the woman says, her voice steady but tired. Ilara nods, offering her a seat. "I offer a place to pause," she replies. "Rest finds people in its own way." The woman smiles faintly. "I think I've forgotten how," she admits. "My name is Anwen." They sit together in comfortable silence, broken only by the soft crackle of the fire. Anwen gazes into the flames for a long moment before speaking again. "I spent my life caring for others," she says. "Children, neighbors, anyone who needed me. Now they're grown, gone, and I don't know who I am without being needed." Ilara listens carefully, feeling the depth of Anwen's words settle around them. "You are still whole," she says gently. "Even when no one is asking for pieces of you." Anwen's eyes fill with tears, and she lets them fall without shame. Later, as the day unfolds, Ilara notices how the forest responds to Anwen's presence. Birds return more quickly to the clearing, and the light seems warmer, as if recognizing a long-held tenderness. Anwen moves slowly, touching leaves, listening to the stream, and with each step, her shoulders lowered, the tightness easing from her frame. "I didn't realize how much I was holding," she murmurs. Ilara nods. "Most people don't," she replies. "They learn by letting go." In the afternoon, a sudden argument breaks out near the edge of the clearing. Two brothers, faces flushed with anger, speak over each other, old resentment spilling out like they have been waiting for this moment. Ilara approaches calmly, raising a hand not to silence them, but to invite a pause. "Sit," she says simply. Reluctantly, they do. She does not ask them to explain or defend themselves. She asks them to breathe. At first, they resist, their breaths shallow and sharp, but gradually, the tension shifts. One brother looks away, his voice cracking as he admits, "I just didn't want to be alone." The other's anger falters, replaced by surprise and something softer. Ilara watches as the space between them narrows, not fixed, but no longer raw. As evening approaches, Ilara feels her own limits again, the quiet ache of giving, and she remembers Anwen's words about being needed. She steps aside, sitting beneath a tree, closing her eyes, allowing the forest to hold her this time. Anwen notices and joins her, saying nothing, simply sharing the shade. After a while, Anwen speaks softly. "You don't have to carry everyone," she says. Ilara smiles, grateful. "I know," she replies. "But it helps to be reminded." Night settles gently, stars appearing one by one, and those who remain gather close to the fire, drawn by warmth and quiet companionship. No one feels the need to speak much. The silence is no longer heavy, it is rich, earned. Ilara watches the faces around her, seeing how rest has softened them, and she understands that the moral taking root here is not about escape or forgetting, but about learning when to stop pushing and start listening. In Elder Willow, the rain-soaked streets glisten under lantern light. Rowan sleeps deeply, his dreams no longer filled with restless images but with a sense of being held, supported. Mira wakes briefly, listening to the quiet, and rests her head back on the pillow with a peaceful smile. The night stretches on, kind and unhurried, teaching its lesson without words, that caring for others begins with caring for the self, and that even the most giving hearts deserve a place to rest. The forest greets the new day with a hush that feels deliberate, as if it is holding something fragile in its hands. Elara wakes with a faint ache behind her eyes, not pain exactly, but the gentle warning of someone who has been awake to others for too long. She sits up slowly, breathing in the cool morning air, reminding herself that listening also means listening inward. For a moment, she stays where she is, hands resting on her knees, allowing her breath to settle before she steps into the day. Before the sun fully clears the trees, a distant sound reaches her ears, uneven and hurried, footsteps that do not belong to someone arriving in peace. Elara stands and moves toward the edge of the clearing just as a man stumbles into view, his clothes dusty, his face drawn tight with fear. He stops short when he sees her, his eyes darting as if expecting pursuit. "They're coming," he says hoarsely. "I couldn't stay." Elara keeps her voice calm. "Slow down," she says. "You're safe here, for now." The man shakes his head, hands trembling. "There's no safe," he insists. "Only running." Elara guides him to sit, placing a cup of water in his hands, waiting until his shaking eases enough for him to drink. "What's your name?" she asks. "Edrin," he replies after a pause. His gaze drops to the ground. "I left my village. Everything I knew." Elara listens, sensing that his fear is layered with guilt. "Why did you leave?" she asks gently. Edrin swallows. "Because staying meant pretending I wasn't breaking." As the morning unfolds, Edrin speaks in fragments, of expectations that crushed him, of a role he could no longer fill, of the shame of walking away. Elara does not interrupt, does not reassure him too quickly. When he finally falls silent, she says, "Leaving is not the same as failing." Edrin's eyes fill with tears, and he presses his hands to his face, the weight of unspoken self-blame finally spilling free. Others arrive quietly throughout the day, drawn by the same unspoken pull, but Elara notices how Edrin stays, on the edges, alert, restless, as if ready to flee again. In the afternoon, she invites him to walk with her to the stream. The water moves steadily, unhurried, carrying leaves and twigs without strain. "It doesn't cling to what passes through," she says softly. Edrin watches, thoughtful. "If it did," she continues, "it would stop flowing." He nods slowly, understanding flickering behind his tired eyes. Later, as shadows lengthen, tension ripples through the clearing when a loud voice rises among the visitors. A man stands, anger sharp in his posture. "Sitting here won't change anything," he snaps. "The world out there doesn't slow down just because we do." Elara meets his gaze, unflinching. "No," she says evenly. "But neither will you survive it if you never pause." The man's jaw tightens, but he does not argue. He sinks back down, staring at the ground, the fight draining from him. As night falls, Elara feels her own weariness deepen. She notices the familiar temptation to push past it, to stay awake just a little longer for everyone else, and she recognizes the pattern she has been helping others unlearn. She asks Anwen, who has remained nearby, to watch over the fire for a while, and Anwen agrees with a warm nod. Elara retreats to the edge of the clearing, sits beneath the trees, and allows herself to rest fully, trusting that the space will hold without her constant presence. That night, she dreams of the old man again, but this time he is seated, resting the lantern beside him rather than holding it aloft. Even light must be set down, he says, meeting her gaze. Elara wakes with the words echoing gently inside her, a reminder etched not in urgency, but in kindness. In Elder Willow, Rowan wakes briefly as dawn approaches, his mind clear, his body relaxed. He notices the absence of the familiar knot in his chest and feels a quiet gratitude he cannot quite explain. Mira stirs beside him, half awake, and when he settles back into sleep, it comes easily, like returning to a place he had forgotten was home. The forest stirs with a subtle energy as a pale mist curls low along the ground, wrapping trunks and stones in a soft veil. Elara wakes to the sound of her own breath moving steadily in her chest, and for a moment she is surprised by how rested she feels. She sits up and watches the mist drift, noticing how it does not rush to clear itself, how it allows the sun to arrive in its own time. The lesson feels familiar now, no longer something she must remember, but something she lives. As the clearing comes into focus, Elara senses a quiet tension lingering from the night before. Edrin sits near the fire pit, staring into the ashes, his posture closed, his thoughts clearly restless. She approaches and sits beside him without speaking. After a while, he breaks the silence. "I keep thinking I should go," he says, "before I get too comfortable." Elara nods. "What frightens you about comfort?" she asks. Edrin hesitates. "That I'll forget who I was supposed to be." Elara looks out toward the trees. "Sometimes," she says softly, "what we were supposed to be was never ours to carry." Later in the morning, a group of travelers arrives together, their voices low and cautious, as if unsure whether they belong. Among them is a woman named Caliph, her eyes sharp, her expression guarded. "We heard this place makes people soft," she says bluntly. Elara meets her gaze calmly. "Rest doesn't weaken," she replies. "It restores." Caliph snorts quietly but stays, sitting just close enough to observe, not close enough to trust. The group shares a meal in silence, the simple act of eating together grounding them more than any words could. Elara notices how Caliph watches the others, how her sharpness dulls slightly as the minutes pass. Afterward, Elara invites them to walk with her along the edge of the forest. As they move, a sudden crack echoes through the trees, the sound of a branch breaking sharply nearby. Several people flinch, hearts racing, old instinct surging. Caliph's hand flies to her side, as if expecting a weapon that is no longer there. Elara stops and turns to them. "Notice what your body does," she says gently. "Not to judge it, just to notice." Caliph's breath is quick, her fists clenched. "My body remembers things my mind wants to forget," she mutters. Elara nods. And it's tired of holding them alone. Kayla swallows hard, emotion flickering across her face before she looks away. That afternoon, a sudden storm rolls in, clouds darkening the sky without warning. Thunder rumbles low and distant, and rain begins to fall, heavy and fast. Some visitors panic, memories of past dangers rising to the surface. Elara raises her voice just enough to be heard. "Stay close," she says. "The forest will shelter us." They gather beneath the larger trees, the canopy absorbing the worst of the downpour. As rain drums around them, Elara leads them in slow breathing, her voice steady, anchoring them in the present. Kayla trembles despite herself, and Elara moves closer, offering her a grounding hand on her shoulder. For a moment, Kayla resists, then she exhales shakily and allows the contact. "I hate feeling like this," she whispers. Elara responds quietly, "There's nothing wrong with your response. It's your body asking to be heard." Kayla closes her eyes, tears mixing with rain, and for the first time, she does not pull away. When the storm passes, the forest feels cleansed, leaves dripping, air fresh and cool. The group returns to the clearing subdued but calmer, the shared experience binding them in a quiet way. Kayla sits by the fire, staring into the flames. "I thought strength meant never stopping," she says at last. Elara meets her gaze. "Strength also means knowing when to rest," she replies. As night falls, Elara senses a deeper shift within herself. The fear of being overwhelmed has softened, replaced by trust, not just in the forest or the lantern, but in the people who gather here, in their capacity to support one another. She allows herself to sit back, listening as others speak softly among themselves, the space no longer dependent on her alone. In Elder Willow, Rowan turns in his sleep as thunder echoes faintly in the distance, but instead of waking in panic, he dreams of standing beneath tall trees, rain falling around him without fear. Mira wakes briefly, hears the storm fade, and drifts back to sleep with a sense of reassurance, as if something ancient and kind is watching over them both, reminding them that even in the storm, there is shelter, and even in fear, there is a path back to calm. The forest wakes slowly after the storm, leaves heavy with rain and the ground dark and rich beneath bare feet. Elara steps outside into the cool morning, the air washed clean, every sound sharper and clearer than before. She inhales deeply, feeling how the scent of wet bark and moss settles her thoughts, and for a moment she simply stands, letting the day arrive without reaching for it. The clearing feels changed, as if the storm has pressed everything into closer honesty. Caliph is already awake, seated near the fire pit, her posture less rigid than before. She watches the embers glow faintly, lost in thought, and when Elara approaches, she speaks without looking up. "I didn't sleep much," she says. Elara sits beside her. "What kept you awake?" Caliph exhales. "The quiet," she admits. "I'm used to noise, to being alert. Silence feels dangerous." Elara nods slowly. "Silence can feel like being left alone," she says. "But it can also be a place to meet yourself." As the morning unfolds, more visitors emerge, stretching stiff limbs, sharing simple food, their movements unhurried. There is a gentleness among them now, a shared understanding formed not through words but through surviving the storm together. Elara suggests a slow walk deeper into the forest, and several people agree, including Edrin and Caliph. They move carefully, the path damp and soft, and Elara encourages them to notice small things, the sound of water dripping from leaves, the way light breaks through the canopy, the steady rhythm of their own steps. Halfway along the path, they come upon a fallen tree blocking the way, its roots torn from the earth, the result of the night storm. Some hesitate, instinctively looking to Elara for direction. She pauses, then steps back slightly. "What do you think?" she asks, inviting rather than leading. After a moment, Edrin speaks. "We could go around," he says. Caliph studies the trunk. "Or climb over," she adds. They exchange glances, and without hurry, they begin to help one another, offering hands, steadying footing, moving together. As Caliph climbs, her foot slips, and for a brief second panic flashes across her face. She freezes, breath caught, memories surging. Elara's voice reaches her calmly. "Feel the ground beneath you," she says. "You're here, now." Caliph closes her eyes, breathes, and slowly regains her balance. When she reaches the other side, her hands shake, but her expression holds something new, a quiet pride. "I didn't run," she says softly. Elara smiles. "You stayed," she replies. "That matters." They return to the clearing by midday, tired but settled. Caliph lingers near Elara as others disperse. "I've spent my life being strong for everyone else," she says. "I don't know who I am without that armor." Elara considers her words. "Armor keeps you alive," she says gently. "But it's heavy. You don't have to take it off forever. Just long enough to rest." Caliph nods, tears brimming but not falling, held by understanding rather than fear. As afternoon fades, a familiar glow appears among the trees, and the old man steps into the clearing, lantern in hand. He surveys the gathered people with quiet approval. "The forest remembers the storm," he says. "And it remembers how you moved through it." His gaze rests on Elara. "You are no longer the only one holding the light." Elara feels a warmth spread through her chest, not pride, but relief. That evening, stories are shared around the fire, not dramatic confessions, but simple moments of honesty, laughter breaking through tension, silence welcomed rather than feared. Elara listens, sometimes speaking, sometimes simply present, trusting the rhythm that has formed among them. When night deepens and people begin to settle, she lies back beneath the stars, feeling held by the earth, the forest, and the quiet community growing around her. In Elder Willow, Rowan wakes briefly just before dawn, a sense of ease lingering from his dreams. He stretches, surprised by how light his body feels, and when he closes his eyes again, sleep returns easily. Mira smiles in the dim light, sensing the same gentle shift, as if somewhere beyond the village, a lantern has been set down not in darkness, but in trust, allowing its glow to spread naturally, teaching without force, guiding without urgency. The dawn arrives wrapped in birdsong, clear and steady, as if the forest itself is practicing a new kind of confidence. Elara wakes with the sound resting gently in her chest, not pulling her forward, not demanding anything, just existing. She sits up and notices how the clearing feels less like a destination now, and more like a living space, shaped by everyone who has passed through it. There is a sense of readiness in the air, not tense, but open. Near the edge of the clearing, Edrin is packing his small bundle, folding his cloak with deliberate care. Ilara approaches quietly, and he looks up, a mixture of resolve and uncertainty in his eyes. "I think I'm ready to go back," he says. "Not to the same place, but to a life where I'm not running." Ilara nods. "Leaving doesn't mean forgetting," she says. "It means choosing what you carry forward." Edrin exhales slowly, relief softening his features. "I used to think rest was giving up," he admits. "Now it feels like preparation." Before Edrin departs, Kayla steps forward, her expression thoughtful. She hands him a small cord she has been twisting from plant fibers. "For the road," she says simply. Edrin accepts it with a quiet smile, surprised by the gesture. Ilara watches the exchange, sensing how something unseen but important has shifted. The clearing is no longer only a place where people come to heal. It is a place where they leave changed. As the day unfolds, a new visitor arrives, a man with weary eyes and ink-stained fingers, his satchel heavy with books and papers. He introduces himself as Thalen, a scholar who has spent years searching for answers in words and theories. "I've read about rest," he says almost defensively. "I just can't seem to experience it." Ilara gestures for him to sit. "Then let the words rest for a while," she replies. Thalen hesitates, then sets his satchel down, the thud sounding louder than expected, as if he has released more than weight. They sit in silence, and Thalen fidgets, clearly uncomfortable. "My mind won't stop," he blurts out. Ilara smiles faintly. "It doesn't have to," she says. "You only need to stop following every thought." She guides him gently, inviting him to notice sensations rather than ideas, the warmth of the sun, the texture of the ground. At first, his brow remains furrowed, but gradually it smooths, and when he opens his eyes again, there is a softness there. "I didn't know it could be this simple," he murmurs. Ilara nods. "Simple doesn't mean easy," she replies. "It means honest." In the afternoon, the group gathers naturally, without prompting, sitting together as if drawn by an unspoken agreement. Kayla speaks quietly, her voice no longer sharp. "I used to think if I stopped moving, everything would catch up to me," she says. "Now I see that stopping is how I know where I am." Others nod, murmuring agreement, the shared understanding deepening. Ilara listens, feeling a sense of fulfillment that is calm rather than triumphant. As the sun lowers, Edrin prepares to leave. He stands at the edge of the clearing, turns back once more, and bows his head slightly. "You didn't save me," he says. "You showed me how to stop hurting myself." Ilara meets his gaze. "You did that," she replies. Edrin smiles, then disappears into the trees, his step steady, unhurried. That night, Ilara feels a quiet confidence settle within her. The fear of being indispensable has faded, replaced by trust in the process she has helped nurture. She sits by the fire, watching the flames dance, aware that each person carries a piece of the lantern now, even as it rests. In Elder Willow, Rowan wakes at dawn, feeling rested in a way he hasn't in years. He sits by the window, watching the light spill across the village, and for the first time, He does not feel the need to brace himself for the day. Mira joins him, their shoulders touching, and they share the quiet without filling it. Somewhere beyond the village, paths are being chosen with care, and the lesson continues to unfold, gently, patiently, reminding all who listen that rest is not an ending, but the beginning of moving forward with intention. The forest greets the 10th morning with a steadiness that feels earned, the kind of calm that comes after many small shifts have settled into place. Ilara wakes before the light fully breaks through the canopy, her body relaxed, her thoughts clear. She notices how different her mornings feel now, no longer braced for what the day might demand, but open to what it might offer. She steps outside and feels the cool ground beneath her feet, grounding herself in the present. A familiar presence lingers nearby, and when she turns, she sees the old man seated on a smooth stone, the lantern resting beside him, its flame dim but constant. "You have reached a turning," he says, his voice quiet but certain. Ilara sits across from him, her posture respectful but at ease. "I feel it," she replies. "Things are changing." He nods. "They always are," he says. "But now you can see it without needing to control it." As the morning unfolds, Phelan approaches Ilara with a thoughtful expression. "I leave today," he says. "But I want to ask something before I go." Ilara gestures for him to continue. "How do I bring this stillness into a world that rewards noise?" Ilara considers this carefully. "By practicing it quietly," she answers. "Stillness doesn't argue with noise. It simply exists beside it, until others notice the difference." Phelan smiles, gratitude softening his features. He bows slightly before departing, his steps lighter than when he arrived. Later, a young couple arrives, their hands entwined tightly, their faces tense with worry. They speak over one another at first, voices rising, fear and frustration spilling out. Ilara listens without interrupting, then gently asks them to sit. "You don't need to convince each other right now," she says. "Just breathe together." Reluctantly, they try. Their breaths are uneven, but slowly, the sharp edges of their panic soften. The woman's shoulders relax, and the man's jaw unclenches. They glance at one another, surprised by the shift. Ilara smiles softly. "Connection often begins with shared silence," she says. As afternoon light filters through the trees, Caliph takes on a new role without announcing it. She notices when someone grows restless, offers water, guides them to sit near the fire. Ilara watches this quietly, understanding the significance. The lantern is being shared, not as a burden, but as a natural extension of what has been learned. When Ilara meets Caliph's eyes, Caliph nods once, a silent acknowledgement of trust. In the evening, the old man rises to leave. He lifts the lantern briefly, its glow reflecting in Ilara's eyes. "You no longer need me to remind you," he says. Ilara feels a swell of emotion, but keeps her voice steady. "You were never carrying it for me," she replies. He smiles, pleased, and steps back into the forest, his form fading into shadow, the lantern's light blending with the starlight. Night settles gently, and the clearing feels complete, not finished, but whole. Ilara sits among the others, sometimes speaking, often listening, her presence no longer the center, but part of a wider circle. She understands now that the moral forming here is not about becoming a guide or a healer, but about remembering how to pause, how to listen, and how to trust others to do the same. In Elder Willow, Rowan and Mira sit at their kitchen table in the quiet morning light, sharing tea without rushing. Rowan notices the absence of the familiar urgency that once clung to his thoughts, and he smiles softly, feeling the truth settle within him. Life will continue to bring its demands, but now he knows there is another way to meet them, one that begins not with pushing forward, but with allowing space, breath, and rest to lead the way. The morning air is crisp, carrying the faint scent of moss and damp earth as Ilara wakes with a sense of anticipation she cannot yet name. The forest feels alive in a quiet, knowing way, as if it has been waiting for her to notice the subtle changes unfolding around her. She rises, stretching slowly, and steps into the clearing, feeling the soft ground beneath her feet, steady and grounding. Today, she senses, will ask of her something she has not yet faced. By mid-morning, a new figure approaches the clearing, a boy, no older than 12, his eyes wide and cautious, his small hands gripping the straps of a worn satchel. I was told you help people, he says, voice trembling. Ilara kneels to meet his gaze, offering calm without question. You're safe here, she replies. What's your name? He hesitates, then whispers, Lyre. Leor's story comes in broken fragments, fear and sadness intertwining. He has run from a village that no longer feels like home, carrying guilt for leaving and worry for those he left behind. Ilara does not rush him. She simply listens, letting the words fall into the quiet air, holding them without judgment. After a long pause, she speaks softly. You are allowed to rest, even when the world asks for more of you. Leor looks at her, disbelief flickering in his eyes, but he nods, settling onto the grass. As the day progresses, other visitors gather, each drawn by the same unseen thread that brought Edrin, Caliph, and Phelan. A man named Selwyn, his hands calloused and face worn, speaks of the weight of responsibility he carries for his family, unable to set it down even for a moment. A woman named Meryl admits she cannot sleep, haunted by memories she wishes she could forget. Ilara guides them gently, teaching through presence rather than instruction, offering ways to breathe, to notice, to exist without judgment. Around mid-afternoon, a tense argument arises near the stream. Two women, voices sharp, words clashing like stones, accuse one another of past mistakes and missteps. Ilara approaches calmly, standing between them, and speaks softly. Sit, she says. Listen, not to respond, but to hear. Hesitation softens into quiet observation, and gradually their anger loses its edge. One woman exhales shakily, the other closes her eyes, and for the first time, the sharp tension is replaced by shared understanding, fragile but real. By sunset, the visitors sit together in the clearing, their bodies weary but lighter, their breaths slower, the silence now carrying comfort rather than unease. Leor rests his head on Ilara's lap, eyes heavy, trust beginning to root itself despite fear. Caliph tends quietly to the fire, her presence steady, a small smile touching her lips. As night falls, the forest seems to lean in closer, leaves whispering, crickets chirping in soft rhythm. Ilara sits back against a tree, eyes closed, feeling the circle of people and life around her. She reflects on the moral forming within this growing community, that true courage is not always action, but allowing oneself and others to pause, to breathe, and to be fully present. In Elder Willow, Rowan wakes briefly, sunlight spilling over rooftops, and notices the calm that rests in his chest. Mira, beside him, shifts and smiles softly. The village stretches and breathes with them, carrying forward a quiet lesson. Strength is born not only in doing, but in trusting the stillness that allows doing to be meaningful. The forest awakens to a soft, golden light filtering through the branches, carrying a sense of warmth and renewal. Ilara rises slowly, feeling the comforting weight of familiarity around her, the rustle of leaves, the scent of damp earth, the distant gurgle of the stream. She pauses for a moment, taking in the quiet energy, sensing that today will bring lessons not of guidance, but of trust. A gentle rustling draws her attention. From behind a cluster of ferns, a young woman steps into the clearing, her movements hesitant, eyes wide with unease. She clutches a small bundle tightly to her chest. I've heard this place helps people like me, she says softly. Ilara nods, motioning to a spot near the fire pit. You're welcome here. Sit, breathe, and know you are safe. The woman hesitates, then lowers herself slowly, still tense. My name is Alina, she whispers. Alina speaks in careful fragments, sharing fear of judgment, of not being understood, of a life weighed down by unspoken sorrow. Ilara listens, her presence steady, not filling the silence, but giving it shape, letting Alina's words settle without hurry. Your feelings are not mistakes, Ilara says gently. They are messages from your heart, asking to be seen. Alina blinks, surprise softening into fragile relief. As the morning passes, more visitors arrive, each carrying their own invisible burdens. Among them is a man named Kale, who refuses to sit, pacing the clearing with clenched fists, muttering about failures he cannot undo. Ilara approaches him quietly, speaking in calm tones. Walk with me, she says. Together they move to the stream, and she encourages him to notice the water flowing around stones, how it yields without resistance yet continues its path. Kale's pacing slows, his tension loosening, and for the first time, he allows a deep exhale to leave him. By afternoon, the clearing fills with a delicate rhythm of quiet breathing, shared silences, and soft laughter as people begin to notice one another without fear. Alina, initially tentatively reaches out to help Phelan adjust the fire, the act small, but meaningful. Caliph observes from a distance, a quiet satisfaction in her gaze, recognizing the way the lantern within them is spreading without words. As evening falls, the old man appears once more, his lantern casting a gentle glow across the clearing. You are teaching without speaking, he observes. Ilara meets his eyes, a soft smile on her lips. They are learning from themselves, she replies. He nods, pleased, and retreats into the shadows, leaving the lantern to mingle with the growing starlight. Night deepens, the forest settling into its comforting rhythm. Ilara sits beneath a tree, watching embers drift from the fire, reflecting on the lesson the day has offered, that true guidance comes not from instructing others, but from holding space, allowing them to encounter their own strength and wisdom. In Elder Willow, Rowan sleeps soundly, the calm of the forest reaching him even in dreams. Mira stirs, feeling the quiet reassurance settle around them both. The village rests, carried gently by a reminder that healing begins with patience, listening, and the courage to let others find their own way. The forest awakens in a hush, the kind that carries both anticipation and quiet reverence. Ilara rises with the first light, feeling the gentle weight of dew on the grass beneath her feet, the way the soft earth responds with grounding support. Today, she senses, will teach her something about patience, not action, about holding without pushing, and about the subtle power of presence. By mid-morning, a man appears at the edge of the clearing, his posture tense, his eyes darting as if searching for threats in every shadow. I've come because I heard there's a place to rest, he says, voice rough and uncertain. Ilara nods, inviting him to sit near the fire. Rest doesn't mean giving up, she says. It means noticing what you've been carrying and letting it settle. The man hesitates, then sits, shoulders hunched. My name is Corin, he mutters. Corin's story unfolds slowly, a web of regrets, expectations, and long-held guilt. He speaks haltingly, unsure if his words will be received. Ilara listens, responding not with answers, but with attention, giving him space to release what he has held too tightly. It's not weakness to pause, she says softly. It's strength to face what weighs on you without running. Corin looks at her, a flicker of understanding in his eyes, relief settling into the tightness of his chest. Later, as the day warms, more visitors arrive. Some bring anger, some grief, some fatigue that seems to cling to their very bones. Among them is Leor, the boy who came weeks before, now quieter, learning to carry himself without fear of every shadow. He watches as newcomers settle, noticing the way Ilara's presence allows them to lower their defenses, and he begins to understand the rhythm of patience, the slow unfolding of trust. In the afternoon, a heated argument erupts among a pair of visitors. Voices rise, words sharp and cutting, old resentments bubbling to the surface. Ilara approaches slowly, placing herself between them without haste. Sit, she says calmly. Listen, not to respond, but to hear. At first, they resist, but the steadiness in her voice, the quiet insistence of her presence, softens them. One exhales shakily, the other's jaw loosens, and slowly, tension yields to the possibility of understanding. By sunset, the clearing feels alive in a different way, not chaotic, but connected, the energy of so many unburdening themselves weaving into a quiet tapestry. Ilara sits on the grass, leaning against a tree, observing Caliph guiding others gently, Thalen offering quiet encouragement, and even Corin, whose chest is lighter, beginning to smile in small, unguarded moments. As night falls, the old man appears, the lantern casting a golden glow across the clearing. You have learned to hold without needing to carry, he says. Ilara smiles, feeling the truth of his words resonate deeply. She closes her eyes, letting the warmth of the fire and the soft breathing of the forest wrap around her. In Elder Willow, Rowan sleeps through the night without waking, the rhythm of calm echoing through his dreams. Mira feels the same stillness settle beside him, a quiet assurance that patience, presence, and gentle guidance can transform even the heaviest hearts. And far beyond the village, the forest stands steady, a living reminder that true strength often lives in quiet endurance, attentive listening, and the courage to let time do its work. The forest greets the new day with a soft golden light, filtering through the trees and glinting off dew-laden leaves. Elara wakes slowly, savoring the calm that now feels less fragile and more like a constant companion. She rises, stretches, and steps into the clearing, noticing how the forest seems to hum with quiet life. Each leaf, each bird, each ripple of water carrying a subtle message. Growth takes time, and healing even more. By mid-morning, a new visitor arrives, moving cautiously among the trees. It is a young man, his clothes dusty, his eyes wary. I heard there's a place to think without being judged, he says softly. Elara gestures to a spot near the fire, inviting him to sit. You are welcome, she replies. This is a place to notice, to breathe, and to be honest with yourself. The young man relaxes slightly, sinking onto the grass. My name is Kalen, he says, voice barely above a whisper. Kalen's story unfolds in hesitant fragments. He speaks of burdens he feels obligated to carry, expectations from family, pressures from work, and a relentless inner critic that never rests. Elara listens, her presence steady and calm, giving weight to his words without interrupting, without trying to fix anything. Your burdens are real, she says softly. But you do not have to carry them alone, and you do not have to carry them all at once. Kalen exhales slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing. As the morning stretches into afternoon, the clearing fills with quiet activity. Lior walks among the newcomers, offering small gestures of kindness, while Caliph tends the fire with gentle attentiveness. Corin, now lighter in spirit, watches silently, learning to support without judgment. Elara notices the subtle ways each person contributes, how the lantern is no longer hers alone, but shared naturally among those present. Suddenly, a loud shout cuts through the calm. Two visitors are arguing, frustration spilling over past misunderstandings. Elara approaches without haste, her voice steady. Sit, she says, and breathe together before speaking. Hesitation fills the space, but gradually, the anger softens, words slowing, and the tension eases into understanding. Kalen watches, wide-eyed, realizing the power of stillness and attention. By evening, the clearing glows softly, bathed in the light of the fire and the first stars. Elara sits back, letting the quiet envelop her, observing the harmony that has grown from patience, listening, and gentle guidance. Kalen sits nearby, head resting on his knees, a tentative smile crossing his face. Corin hums softly, and even Lior leans against a tree, eyes heavy but calm. The old man appears as night deepens, his lantern casting a warm glow over the gathering. You are learning the rhythm of presence, he says. Elara meets his gaze, understanding the depth of his words. She closes her eyes, letting the warmth of the fire, the soft breathing of the forest, and the gentle trust of those around her fill her completely. In Elder Willow, Rowan stretches as morning approaches, feeling an unusual lightness in his chest. Mira notices and smiles softly, sharing the quiet sense of reassurance. The village rests, carried by the unseen lessons of the forest, that strength is nurtured in patience, courage grows in stillness, and true guidance is measured not by force, but by the quiet space we create for others to find their own way. The morning arrives like a soft sigh, sunlight spilling through the canopy in golden streaks that make the dew on the leaves sparkle like tiny lanterns. Ilara wakes slowly, feeling the calm that has settled over the clearing like a familiar blanket. She stretches and steps outside, letting the cool earth beneath her feet remind her of the steady rhythm of life, the quiet persistence of growth, and the gentle unfolding of each moment. By mid-morning, a woman approaches the clearing, moving cautiously, her shoulders hunched as if carrying the weight of invisible burdens. I was told there's a place to rest without being judged, she says softly, her voice trembling. Ilara gestures to the fire pit. You are welcome here, she replies. Sit, breathe, and let yourself be. The woman lowers herself carefully to the grass. My name is Celira, she says, eyes downcast. Celira begins to speak in broken, hesitant fragments, revealing the pressure she has carried for years, expectations from family, the weight of work, and the fear of disappointing those she loves. Ilara listens without interruption, allowing the story to unfold naturally. You are not weak for feeling this, she says softly. You are human, and the heart carries more than we often realize. Celira looks up, surprise and relief mingling in her eyes, and a single tear rolls down her cheek. As the morning progresses, others arrive, drawn by the quiet power of the clearing. Leor wanders among them, offering gentle gestures of encouragement. Caliph tends the fire with calm attention, and Corin, now steadier in spirit, helps guide newcomers with quiet patience. The lantern, once carried solely by Ilara, now seems to glow collectively, shared among all who come seeking solace. In the afternoon, an argument erupts between two men over a misunderstanding from earlier. Their voices rise, sharp and impatient. Ilara approaches without haste, standing between them. Sit, she instructs. Listen, not to reply, but to understand. Slowly, breaths even out, voices soften, and tension dissolves into tentative understanding. Celira watches, fascinated, learning the power of quiet presence over forceful words. As evening falls, the clearing is bathed in a warm glow from the fire and the first stars appearing in the sky. Ilara sits beneath a tree, observing the harmony that has emerged through patience, empathy, and gentle guidance. Celira rests her head on her knees. Caliph hums softly. Leor leans against a tree, and Corin smiles quietly. Each person carries a small piece of the calm that has been nurtured here, a shared rhythm of trust and presence. The old man appears as darkness deepens, lantern in hand, his gaze sweeping over the group. You are learning to guide without forcing, to hold without burdening, he says. Ilara nods, feeling the truth of his words resonate deep within her. She closes her eyes, letting the quiet of the forest, the warmth of the fire, and the gentle breathing of the people around her fill her completely. In Elder Willow, Rowan sleeps deeply, his chest rising and falling in an even, relaxed rhythm. Mira stirs beside him, sensing the calm that rests within him and within the village itself. The lessons of the forest have reached beyond its borders, that true strength is measured not by action alone, but by patience, presence, and the courage to allow oneself and others the space to heal. The morning light filters softly through the trees, casting long, gentle shadows across the clearing. Ilara wakes slowly, feeling the comforting rhythm of the forest around her, the rustle of leaves, the distant chirping of birds, the steady murmur of the stream. Each sound feels intentional, as if the forest itself is reminding her that growth and healing are not rushed, but unfold with patient persistence. By mid-morning, a young man appears at the edge of the clearing, his hands fidgeting, his eyes anxious. I've been told this is a place to find peace, he says hesitantly. Elara gestures to a spot near the fire. You are welcome here, she replies softly. Sit, breathe, and allow yourself to rest. The young man lowers himself cautiously to the grass. My name is Tavian, he whispers. Tavian begins to speak in fragmented words, revealing the weight of self-doubt, unfulfilled expectations, and fears of failure that have shadowed him for years. Elara listens without interruption, offering presence rather than advice. Acknowledging your burdens is not surrender, she says gently. It is the first step toward carrying them more lightly. Tavian exhales slowly, shoulders loosening, and for the first time in a long while, he allows himself to feel unburdened. Throughout the morning, others arrive, each drawn to the clearing by a quiet, unspoken pull. Selara sits nearby, observing, beginning to understand the strength in simply being present. Kalith tends the fire, her actions steady and mindful, while Leor offers small gestures of kindness to newcomers. The energy in the clearing hums with a shared rhythm, the lantern now glowing collectively through the presence of each individual. By mid-afternoon, a tense confrontation arises between two visitors, old frustrations spilling into sharp words. Elara steps calmly between them. Sit, she instructs. Listen not to respond, but to hear. The visitors hesitate, then slowly begin to mirror her calm, their breathing slowing, their voices softening. Tavian watches intently, recognizing the subtle power of presence and patience over confrontation. As the sun begins to lower, casting long, warm shadows across the clearing, the group gathers near the fire, bodies relaxed, minds lighter. Tavian leans back, taking in the quiet connection surrounding him. Selara smiles softly, Kalith hums, and Leor sits cross-legged against a tree, eyes closed in reflection. The forest itself seems to hold them gently, reinforcing the lesson that trust, patience, and shared presence create strength. Night settles over the clearing, the stars beginning to appear one by one. The old man emerges briefly, lantern in hand, his eyes surveying the group. You are learning the quiet art of guidance, he says. To hold without controlling, to light the way without carrying the burden. Elara nods, a soft smile touching her lips as she closes her eyes, letting the forest, the fire, and the calm breathing of those around her fill her completely. In Elder Willow, Rowan sleeps peacefully, the earlier restlessness absent from his dreams. Mira shifts beside him, sensing the same deep calm, the reassurance that strength lies not only in action, but in patience, presence, and the courage to allow oneself and others the space to heal and grow. The forest's lessons stretch silently, reaching beyond its borders, weaving their quiet magic into lives touched by stillness. The morning rises quietly over the forest, sunlight drifting in soft beams through the canopy, touching dew on leaves like tiny, glimmering lanterns. Elara wakes slowly, feeling the familiar, steady heartbeat of the clearing around her, the soft rustle of foliage, the gentle murmur of the stream, the distant songs of birds. Today, she senses, will teach about patience, trust, and the quiet power of understanding without judgment. A visitor arrives by mid-morning, moving cautiously, eyes flicking nervously from tree to tree. I was told this place helps people find themselves, he says softly. Elara gestures to the clearing near the fire. Sit, breathe, and allow yourself to simply be, she replies. The young man lowers himself to the grass, shoulders tense. My name is Ren, he whispers. Ren begins to speak in hesitant fragments, revealing years of self-doubt, fear of failure, and the constant weight of trying to meet impossible expectations. Elara listens, her presence calm and unwavering. The weight you carry is not yours to bear alone, she says gently. Acknowledging it is the first step toward relief. Ren exhales slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing as he feels heard, not judged. As the morning stretches into afternoon, others gather quietly, drawn by the calm energy of the clearing. Tabian sits near the stream, noticing the subtle rhythms of breathing around him. Selira observes, learning that strength can exist in gentleness. Caliph tends the fire with attentive care, and Leor offers small, thoughtful gestures to newcomers. The lantern, once solely Elara's, now glows in shared presence, illuminating the clearing with warmth and trust. A sudden conflict arises when two visitors, frustrated and tense, speak over each other sharply. Elara approaches calmly, standing between them. Sit, she instructs. Listen not to respond, but to understand. Slowly, their anger softens, breaths even out, and voices lower. Ren watches intently, realizing that quiet observation and steady presence can diffuse tension more powerfully than words or force. As the sun dips toward the horizon, the clearing takes on a golden glow. Visitors sit together, bodies relaxed, hearts lighter, finding comfort in shared stillness. Ren leans back, noticing the quiet harmony, a small smile touching his lips. Selira exhales, Caliph hums softly, and Leor rests against a tree, eyes closed, taking in the sense of trust and connection surrounding them. Night falls gently, stars appearing one by one, and the old man emerges briefly, lantern in hand, his gaze sweeping over the group. You are learning the subtle art of guidance, he says softly. To hold without controlling, to light the way without bearing the weight. Elara nods, closing her eyes, letting the warmth of the fire, the quiet breathing of the forest, and the gentle presence of the group fill her completely. In Elder Willow, Rowan sleeps peacefully, his chest rising and falling with even, relaxed rhythm. Mira lies beside him, sensing the calm settling over the village. Beyond the forest, the lessons of patience, trust, and the quiet power of presence ripple outward, reminding all who are willing to listen that true strength often grows in silence, gentle attention, and the courage to allow space for healing. The morning light filters softly through the tall trees, casting golden patterns on the forest floor, and Elara wakes feeling the familiar, gentle rhythm of the clearing around her. The air smells of damp earth and moss, and the soft murmur of the stream carries a steady calm that seeps into her chest. Today, she senses, will teach about patience, not the impatient hurry of trying to fix things, but the quiet, enduring patience of listening and allowing. By mid-morning, a young woman steps into the clearing, shoulders tense, eyes darting nervously between the trees. I was told this is a place to be heard, she says softly. Elara gestures to a spot near the fire. Sit, Breathe, and allow yourself to simply exist here, she replies gently. The woman lowers herself carefully to the grass, her hands fidgeting. My name is Izura, she whispers. Izura speaks in hesitant fragments, sharing burdens she has carried for years, the pressure to meet expectations, the weight of self-doubt, and the fear of never being enough. Ilara listens, offering presence rather than answers, her calm demeanor encouraging Izura to continue. Acknowledging your fears does not make you weak, Ilara says softly. It is the first step toward finding your own strength. Izura exhales slowly, her shoulders relaxing, and for the first time in a long while, she allows herself to feel safe. Throughout the morning, others gather, drawn to the clearing by the quiet warmth that has begun to radiate naturally from the group. Tabian sits near the stream, observing the rhythm of breathing and the ease that has begun to settle among the visitors. Selara watches, learning how patience and calm presence can nurture strength. Caliph tends the fire with gentle care, while Leor offers small gestures of kindness, helping newcomers feel included. The lantern glows collectively, its warmth now shared by all who have come seeking solace. By afternoon, a tense argument arises between two visitors, frustration and misunderstanding spilling into sharp words. Ilara approaches calmly, standing between them. Sit, she instructs. Listen not to respond, but to hear. Slowly, their anger softens, breaths even out, and their voices quiet. Izura watches intently, realizing the subtle power of observation and gentle presence over confrontation. As the sun dips toward the horizon, the clearing glows in soft amber light. Visitors sit together, bodies relaxed, hearts lighter, learning the strength that grows from patience and shared understanding. Izura leans back, a tentative smile crossing her face. Tabian exhales, Selara smiles softly, and Leor rests against a tree, eyes closed, taking in the calm that has been nurtured. Night settles gently over the forest, stars appearing one by one, and the old man appears briefly, lantern in hand. You are learning the quiet art of guidance, he says softly. To hold without controlling, to illuminate without bearing the burden. Ilara nods, closing her eyes, letting the warmth of the fire, the gentle breathing of the forest, and the shared presence of the group fill her completely. In Elder Willow, Rowan sleeps soundly, chest rising and falling evenly. Mira lies beside him, sensing the calm that now rests over both the village and the forest beyond. The lessons of patience, trust, and quiet presence ripple outward silently, teaching that true strength often lives in stillness, gentle attention, and the courage to allow space for healing and growth. The forest wakes in a quiet glow, sunlight streaming through the trees, painting golden patterns on the damp earth. Ilara rises slowly, feeling the gentle rhythm of the clearing beneath her feet, the steady murmur of the stream, and the soft whispers of leaves moving in the morning breeze. She inhales deeply, sensing the subtle lessons of patience, trust, and the quiet power of presence waiting to unfold today. By mid-morning, a man approaches the clearing, his gait hesitant, his eyes scanning nervously. I was told there's a place where I can breathe without judgment, he says softly. Ilara gestures to a spot near the fire. Sit, breathe, and allow yourself to simply be, she replies. The man lowers himself carefully to the grass. My name is Darian, he whispers. Darian's story comes in hesitant, fragmented words, revealing burdens carried for years, expectations unmet, past mistakes replayed in his mind, and a constant fear of never being enough. Elara listens patiently, offering her presence rather than advice. Acknowledging what weighs on you does not make you weak, she says softly. It is the first step toward freedom. Darian exhales slowly, tension easing from his shoulders, the weight he has carried beginning to lift. As the morning stretches into afternoon, more visitors arrive. Isra sits quietly nearby, observing and learning. Tabian tends to small gestures of support, while Caliph keeps the fire steady, her movements calm and deliberate. Lior moves gently among the newcomers, offering smiles and helping hands. The lantern glows warmly now, its light shared among all who have come seeking solace, each person carrying a piece of its calm. By mid-afternoon, a heated disagreement erupts between two visitors, voices sharp and angry. Elara steps calmly between them. Sit, she instructs. Listen not to reply, but to understand. Slowly, their anger softens, breaths even out, and their voices quiet. Darian watches closely, noticing the subtle strength in quiet presence and patient attention, the way understanding blooms without force. As the sun lowers, the clearing glows in warm amber hues. Visitors sit together, relaxed and calm, their hearts lighter. Darian leans back, taking in the peaceful scene, a small smile touching his lips. Isra exhales quietly, Tabian hums softly, Caliph tends the fire with care, and Lior rests against a tree, eyes closed, absorbing the gentle trust that fills the clearing. Night settles over the forest, stars appearing one by one, and the old man emerges briefly, lantern in hand, his gaze sweeping over the group. You are learning the subtle art of guidance, he says softly. To hold without controlling, to illuminate without bearing the burden. Elara nods, closing her eyes, letting the warmth of the fire, the quiet breathing of the forest, and the shared presence of the group fill her completely. In Elder Willow, Rowan sleeps peacefully, chest rising and falling evenly. Mira lies beside him, sensing the calm that now rests over the village and the forest beyond. The quiet lessons of patience, presence, and gentle guidance ripple outward, reminding all who are willing to listen that true strength grows in stillness, empathy, and the courage to allow space for healing. The forest greets the morning in soft, golden light, casting gentle patterns through the leaves and onto the damp earth. Elara rises slowly, feeling the familiar, steady rhythm of the clearing beneath her feet, the distant murmur of the stream, and the quiet whispers of birdsong. Today feels different, though subtly so a sense that the lessons of patience, trust, and gentle presence are ready to deepen further. By mid-morning, a young man steps cautiously into the clearing, eyes darting nervously, shoulders tense. I was told this is a place to breathe without fear, he says softly. Elara gestures to a spot near the fire. Sit, breathe, and allow yourself to simply exist here, she replies calmly. The young man lowers himself to the grass, hands fidgeting. My name is Kale, he whispers. Kale's words come in hesitant fragments, revealing burdens he has carried silently for years, the weight of unmet expectations, regrets he cannot release, and fear of judgment from others. Elara listens with unwavering attention, offering presence rather than solutions. Acknowledging your fears does not make you weak, she says softly. It is the first step toward discovering the strength within you. Kale exhales slowly, his shoulders relaxing, and a tentative sense of relief begins to fill him. Throughout the morning, other visitors arrive, drawn by the calm energy that now radiates naturally from the clearing. Darian sits nearby, observing quietly. Izura notices the small gestures of kindness shared among newcomers. Caliph tends the fire with steady hands, while Leor offers gentle guidance and encouragement to those arriving. The lantern glows warmly, now shared collectively, its light strengthened by the presence of each individual seeking solace. By afternoon, tension rises between two visitors, frustration spilling over into sharp words. Ilara steps calmly between them. "Sit," she instructs. Listen not to reply, but to understand. Slowly, their anger softens, breaths evening out, and voices quiet. Kale watches intently, recognizing the quiet power of presence and patience in resolving conflict without force. As the sun lowers, the clearing is bathed in warm, amber light. Visitors sit together, bodies relaxed, hearts lighter, their breaths slower and calmer. Kale leans back, taking in the peace surrounding him. Darian exhales with quiet relief. Izura smiles softly. Leor rests against a tree, eyes closed. Caliph tends the fire with gentle care, and Ilara sits back, letting the calm energy envelop her. Night settles over the forest, stars appearing one by one. The old man emerges briefly, lantern in hand, his gaze sweeping over the group. "You are learning the art of quiet guidance," he says. "To hold without controlling, to illuminate without carrying the weight alone." Ilara nods, closing her eyes, allowing the warmth of the fire, the gentle breathing of the forest, and the shared presence of the group to fill her completely. In Elder Willow, Rowan sleeps peacefully, his chest rising and falling in even rhythm. Mira lies beside him, sensing the calm resting over the village and the forest beyond. The lessons of patience, presence, and gentle understanding ripple outward, reminding all who are willing to listen that true strength grows not from action alone, but from quiet attention, empathy, and the courage to create space for healing and growth.